voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's Monday, January the 12th. I'm back in the free state of Florida. Was in Orlando last week. Today and tomorrow, we're in Palm Beach Gardens, beautiful over here. And on Wednesday, we're broadcasting a special show from Tallahassee, Florida. Now, over the weekend, I was in New York with our friend of the show, Congressman Mike Lawler. And we were there with some interesting and excited Republicans in Orangetown, New York. Great crowd, signed a lot of books. A Revolution of Common Sense was flying off the shelves. So I want to thank Congressman Lawler and the Republicans in Orangetown for all of your hospitality. Coming up at 22 minutes past the hour today, Haley Strack, intrepid reporter from the National Review, is coming by to discuss her latest piece on this group called Ice Watch. This is what Renee Good was doing in Minneapolis. She was working for Ice Watch. She was trained by Ice Watch to impede and obstruct federal law enforcement. We'll learn about it from Haley Strack. 33 minutes past the hour. Greg Gianforte, the governor of Montana. We're excited to have him here to discuss the lawlessness going on in some of these rebellious blue states like Minnesota. Plus, he's got a great story to tell about life in Montana right now. Greg Gianforte, the governor, coming by at the bottom of the hour. The Scott Jennings Show is brought to you by Ease Total Health. Health insurance is broken. Ease fixes it with no deductibles, no restrictions on doctors or hospitals. It is a set of benefits that you can use from day one if you're not happy with private insurance that you currently have, and chances are you aren't. Visit easeforeveryone.com/Scott to learn more. Ease Total Health, EASE. Let's get to the news of the day. I want to talk to you today about courage, real courage, and I want to talk to you about the people of Iran. Right now in cities across Iran, ordinary men and women are taking extraordinary risks. They are protesting in the streets, knowing full well what awaits them from the brutal regime. Beatings, prison, torture, death. They're not doing this for social media clout, folks. They're doing it because they have reached a breaking point. I've seen footage of grief-stricken families in Iran searching through rows and rows of dead bodies after the Islamic Republic started massacring anti-regime protesters in their ruthless crackdown. Dozens of bodies zipped up in black bags are piled up outside of the hospital in Tehran as people try to identify their relatives and loved ones. People are wailing in grief in the streets of Iran. To understand why this is happening, you have to understand a little history. In 1979, Iranians were promised a revolution that would bring justice and dignity. What they got instead was a brutal, theocratic regime. And since then, nearly a half a century has passed, and an entire nation has grown up knowing censorship instead of free speech and fear instead of freedom. The Ayatollah rules through fear. Political dissent is not allowed. People are killed for speaking up. Thousands killed, tortured, and imprisoned over the decades. For what? For demanding basic human freedom. The regime's morality police harass the women there with a vengeance. They monitor their clothing and their behavior. A woman in Iran today can be arrested, beaten, or even killed for showing her hair. Women are denied equal rights. Those who stay in Iran risk surveillance, harassment, imprisonment. This regime maintains power not through consent, but through intimidation. And yet, the Iranian people have never stopped resisting over the years, despite the threats to themselves. In 2009, millions poured into the streets in what became known as the Green Movement. They wanted honest elections, and the response was brutal. In 2019, economic despair sparked another uprising. What did they do then? They shut down the internet. They killed people in the dark, hoping the world would not notice. In 2022, Masa Amini, a young woman, was arrested by the so-called morality police for, they said, wearing her hijab incorrectly. She never came home. Dying in custody, her death shattered whatever illusion remained that this regime could be reformed from the inside or from within. Her name became a rallying cry heard around the world. Women, life, freedom. Women were cutting their hair in the streets. Students were ripping down regime posters. Workers walked off the job, and for a moment, the fear cracked and the truth poured out. Now in 2026, we're here again, another wave of protests, another moment when the Iranian people are saying enough is enough. These are teachers and shopkeepers and students and mothers and fathers and young people who look at their future and see nothing but bleakness, repression, and life under the heavy yoke of a brutal regime. They are protesting a system that spends billions exporting terror abroad while its own people struggle to afford food. They fund militias and missiles while silencing women and shooting teenagers. This brutal regime needs the support of the United States of America. We must be clear about where we stand today. And fortunately, we have a president who has shown extreme moral clarity in dealing with these issues and in dealing with the brutal Iranian regime. Last night, our president made some comments about what we might be prepared to do. Here's the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, on the threat that Iran poses to the world and to its own people.
Iran takes your threats seriously.
I think so. Don't you think so, CNN? Don't you think so? Wouldn't you say that they probably do at this point? After going through it for years with me, being hit, Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, the Iran nuclear threat wiped out, don't you think, and then you just had Venezuela, don't you think, she says, CNN, do you think they take your threat seriously? Wouldn't you say they do after all of the things we've done? What a stupid question.
The president is said to be getting briefings and mulling over options to help the people stand up to the regime. He has threatened them. He has said if they fire on or move against their own people, the United States will engage. Hopefully he will follow through on those threats at just the right moment, just as he did when he took out Iran's nuclear weapons last year. This president has a knack for good timing when it comes to dealing with the head of the terror octopus. As we all wait and watch, we should pray for these protesters and for the people who are in the streets facing down the evil regime, who are standing up for human liberty, who are fighting for the Iranian people to emerge from this half-century of darkness. To anyone listening who wonders whether words matter, they do. Silence is what tyrants rely on. Attention is their enemy. Truth is their weakness. To the people of Iran, if you can hear this, you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. The people of the United States are with you. The President of the United States is with you. The world is watching. History is listening. Freedom has a long memory, and one day it will remember who stood up and who stood aside. We see you. We hear you. We stand with you. This is Common Sense for the American People. You're listening to it. It's the Scott Jennings Show on Salem. I want to give you a word from our friends at Child Help. Child Help. They are fighting against the scourge of child abuse. They run the National Child Abuse Hotline. We need your help to keep the hotline up and running. I personally donate to Child Help. I have personally been to their national headquarters. I can personally vouch and attest for the good work that they are doing. You can help us. $27 funds one call to the hotline for one child. We could save a life for $27. Sounds like a good deal to me. Text the word Child Help to 94878 and donate $27, or donate online, childhelp.org/Scott. That's childhelp.org/Scott. Hey, Haley Strack from the National Review is coming up. We'll talk about Ice Watch. It's common sense for the American people. Stay with us.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
January the 10th, 1776, 250 years ago, Thomas Paine's influential pamphlet, Common Sense, was published. We say thank you to Thomas Paine for inspiring the name of this show, Common Sense for the American People. Jan 10, 1776. It was published in Philadelphia by Robert Bell. It became an instant sensation that persuaded American colonists to demand independence from Great Britain. Scott Jennings here on Salem. I want to show you and listen to some crazy libs in a church. Let's pull it up, boys. Cut to libs training to fight ICE.
Has already started, as we said. People have been doing the same thing. This was an event at a church there on Monday night. People acted out immigration detainments, and the rest of the room practiced filming them and making noise to call attention to them.
If you're listening to this on live terrestrial radio, literally they're play acting out ICE agents arresting illegals, and people are practicing filming it. My next guest is Haley Strack. She is intrepid reporter and staff writer at the National Review, making her inaugural appearance here on the Scott Jennings Show. Haley, welcome to the show. You have some reporting, vital reporting in the National Review that I want to highlight. Your article is called Renee Good Belonged to Ice Watch, a group that trained activists to interfere with agents and block vehicles. You find it at the National Review. Haley, what did you find out about Renee, and what do you know about Ice Watch and what they are doing in the United States of America?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Scott. You yourself said just last week that we're seeing like so many acts of political vigilantism pop up. And what we see in this video from the church, and certainly what we see in Renee Good's status as an Ice Watch member, is that these are coordinated acts of political vigilantism. I mean, people are literally training themselves on how to evade arrest and calling it an act of solidarity with illegal immigrants. They're calling the process of resistance a mini antifada, which is, of course, the status symbol in progressive circles. So what our reporting at National Review found is that there is an Ice Watch group in Minnesota that literally published pamphlets and guidebooks on how blocking ICE vehicles is a justifiable act of resistance. And, you know, obviously a court of law is going to deem perhaps if Renee Good was intentionally trying to block ICE there. But we're going to see what happens. And certainly she was a member of a group that encouraged activists to block and obstruct law enforcement.
Whoa, 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 whoa. I was assured on CNN the other night, Haley, that this poor lady was just an innocent bystander trying to get through the neighborhood. You're telling me that she was part of a group that was training to do things like use their vehicles to block the road and to surround members of ICE while they were discharging their lawful federal law enforcement duties?
Yeah, so we've been tracking these groups for a while. We've been tracking the ICE Tracker apps, especially when President Trump was trying to get them removed from the App Store. And something that kept popping up was like these symbols and icons of the resistance movement that we're talking about ICE. One of those is something that you mentioned that you saw on Becca Good's neck. Becca Good is, of course, Renee Good's wife, and she stepped out of the car just before Renee was shot. She was wearing a bright orange plastic necklace, which is, of course, what anti-ICE activists always wear at these sort of protests to alert residents to the presence of ICE. So that was honestly the first thing that stood out to me in the video, because the one thing that the Alpha News video published last week shows us is that Renee Good and her wife were certainly not there by accident. They were not innocent bystanders just caught up in the street. I can't speak to what Renee were in her car, but I can say without a doubt that they were there at the site of law enforcement activities.
We've got about 30 seconds, Haley. Can you tell our listeners how it is that Renee Good came to join Ice Watch? According to your writing, she learned about it. Well, you tell us how she learned about it.
Yeah, and her kids' uber progressive charter school. And something we'll note for the Minneapolis Public Schools, which is a little bit wild if we remember what remote learning during COVID did to kids. Because this school system in particular is so steeped in progressive thought that they think it's super justifiable to allow kids to intervene in these protests and for parents to be activists as well.
They learned about it in a school, folks. Learned about it in a school. Find Haley Strack at the National Review at Strack Haley on the X platform. Look up her vital reporting about how Renee Good in Minneapolis belonged to Ice Watch and how these groups of activists are training all over the place, all over the country, to interfere with federal law enforcement agents and to block their vehicles. By the way, interfering with federal law enforcement is a felony. My next guest after we take a break is the governor of Montana. Greg Gianforte is coming by. Stay with us. Common sense for the American people on Salem.
Straight talk without the bluster. When you positively need the truth, this is where you come. The Scott Jennings Show.
It's Monday, January 12th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here on Salem. Joining us, special conversation today. Governor Greg Gianforte of the great state of Montana and the newly elected chairman of the Republican Governors Association. Governor, thanks for joining us here on Salem on the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, Scott, it's a pleasure to be with you.
So I want to start with a little bit of news of the day, Governor, something that is bugging me, and I am watching this unfold in states across the country. It seems to me that we have a number of governors, mayors, and local officials of other stripes who seem to be confused about what their duties and responsibilities are. I want to play a piece of video for you. This is the chief of police in Portland, Oregon. His name is Bob Day, crying because he had to report to the people of his town that 2 members of Tren de Aragua, illegal aliens, had been arrested. Let's see the chief.
It saddens me that we even have to qualify these remarks, because I understand, or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger. This information in no way is meant to disparage or to condone or support or agree with any of the actions that occurred yesterday. But it is important that we stay committed to the rule of law, that we stay committed to the facts, that we stay a trustworthy and legitimate police department for all of Portlanders.
For those of you listening on the radio, while this crying police chief was talking, he was dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. Governor Gianforte, how many police chiefs or sheriffs in Montana are crying when illegal aliens are arrested and deported?
Well, Scott, this is one of the biggest differences between blue states and red states. In red states like Montana, we back the blue, we arrest criminals, and we lock them up. I'm so proud of what President Trump has done to secure the border, but we're still dealing with the disastrous effects of the Biden open border policy. We've seen it even here in Montana with Tren de Aragua members arrested in Montana directly as a result of the failure of the Biden administration. I'm so proud of the administration. And again, we support the rule of law in Montana. We don't have sheriffs crying on TV about them having to do their job.
Yeah, when you couple that with people like the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, Governor Walz over in Minnesota, the police sheriff in Philadelphia, we see other Democratic officials around the country saying we shouldn't be under the federal government here. We don't have to follow federal laws here. You're a governor. You also served at the federal level in Congress. Why do you think Democrats all of a sudden believe that because they don't like some law or some policy of the duly elected administration that they can exist in a state of, at a minimum, rhetorical secession from the Union?
Well, I don't get it, Scott. I mean, I think the number one responsibility of government, whether it's state or federal, is to protect the people. We have criminals. We have poison flooding across the border and Americans dying. And people who have come here illegally after committing crimes in their home country, they come here and, just as we saw in Portland, committing crimes and killing people there. we need to arrest them. We need to apply due process, and we need to, if they are found guilty, they need to be taken out of the country.
You're the newly elected chairman of the Republican Governors Association, so you speak for all these governors in the country and the political organization that we call in Washington the RGA. Today, Republican governors issued a statement in support of oral arguments regarding protecting women's sports. This is transgender arguments going on at the Supreme Court. Why was it important for Republican governors to speak with one voice when it comes to protecting women's sports?
Because it matters. We've outlawed men playing on women's sports in Montana. We're watching with interest as West Virginia and Idaho, they're hearing tomorrow in front of the Supreme Court to defend the laws that they've legitimately passed there. And I'll just say, as the newly elected chair of the Republican Governors Association, I'm proud to serve. We have 36 governor's races in the United States here in 2026 alone. And we see the stark difference between red states and blue states in that prior little discussion we had about law enforcement or men on women's sports teams. It makes a difference who your governor is. And in red states, we're finding lower taxes, less regulation. Attainment of the American dream is easier. And this is why I was very proud to lead an effort with Republican governors to make our voice heard, to say, listen, let's let women play on women's teams. Let's let men play on men's team, just to weigh in as the Supreme Court hears these arguments. That's an important hearing. They won't make a ruling tomorrow, but they're going to hear oral arguments, and we'll get a decision later this year. I think common sense is going to prevail. We wanted to make sure we weighed in for women and girls so that they have an opportunity to compete fairly.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest common sense issues in America. I used to call it an 80-20 issue. I now think it's like a 95-5 issue. Nobody wants their little girls to have to go into a locker room with a boy. Nobody wants their little girls getting spiked on in volleyball games by males. I mean, it's patently ridiculous, so thank you for standing up for women's sports. You mentioned, by the way, that in red states we have a different quality of life right now. That extends to the economy. This also extends to your state of Montana. You've had 4 years of historically low unemployment under your leadership and under Republican leadership in Montana. To what policies do you attribute Montana's economic success over the last 4 years?
Well, Scott, it's not complicated. It's just hard to get done. When I got elected in 2020, I was the first Republican governor in 16 years in Montana, and it was a little like cleanup on aisle 3, 4, and 5. We had to unlock, we had to get rid of the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates. We had to open business back up during the pandemic. Then we went to work, and we've lowered taxes. We've now eliminated or streamlined 35% of all the regulations in the state. And as a result, we have more people working than ever before. We've had record low unemployment, below 3.4% for now over 4 years consecutively. And the statistic I'm most proud of is our wage growth in Montana, which is the take-home pay that people get, is now, we're one of 2 states in the country where wage growth has exceeded inflation over the last 5 years. Proud of that fact because our whole goal, I always say, I'm with the government and I'm here to stay out of your way. We need to let the entrepreneurs build their businesses, create jobs so people can buy homes and pursue the American dream. And this is what we're seeing in red states. Of the states with the lowest unemployment, Montana's in the top 10 in the country for low unemployment. Of the top 15 states with low unemployment, 11 of them are headed up by Republican governors. It's because our conservative policies allow people to prosper and make life more affordable, in stark contrast to what we're seeing in blue states. So I'm encouraged by that. But as I always say, there's more rocks in the rock pile. We have more work to do.
Speaking of rocks in the rock pile, I want to talk to you about an economic issue and a national security issue that has to do with critical minerals. I understand you're about to make some breaking news announcements today about what's going on in Montana as it relates to having critical minerals being mined right here in the United States. What's happening on this front today, sir?
Well, a number of things. I mean, Montana is the treasure state. We have a long history of natural resource development. We have 40% of all the coal in North America is in Montana. We've been keeping the lights on in Tokyo, Seoul, and Taipei for decades, as well as Seattle. And recently, I was able to cut the ribbon on an expansion of the only antimony smelter in North America. This is used in many energy sources. But the new news today, Lattice Materials in Bozeman, Montana, in December, they received almost a $20 million contract with the Department of War for development of critical minerals. Today, they're announcing an 80,000 square foot expansion in their business that's a direct result that will help with these rare earth minerals for the development of advanced semiconductors. So Montana's doing its part as we work to reshore critical minerals and cut the supply chains from China.
It sounds like that these things are only possible because of a different attitude with the new administration in Washington. Talk about, you've been governor under Biden, you've been governor under Donald Trump. What's the difference on energy, critical minerals, and other issues as you seek to bring prosperity to your people?
Well, it's night and day. We tried to work with the Biden administration. In fact, at one point, I authored a letter. I had 27 governors sign that letter, just asking for a meeting with the Biden administration. In over a 2-year period, all we got was crickets. There was no response. I've been to the White House a number of times since President Trump has come in. I was there when he signed his executive orders to expand energy production. We've been working directly with Secretary Wright, Secretary Burgum, of course, a former governor from North Dakota. It's like night and day. So finally, somebody's home and advancing America's interest. It's such a pleasure, whether it comes to managing our forests, developing energy resources. It's night and day.
If you could give the Congress one piece of advice about what they could do to further help you as a governor as they embark on their legislative journey here in 2026, what would it be?
Well, the states are in a position to pursue policies. One thing we did just last fall, we worked with the Forest Service to expand state management of federal lands. We just recently signed the largest stewardship agreement where the state of Montana, just by way of background, we manage about 5 million acres of state land for both timber production as well as grazing. And guess what, Scott? We make money when we do it. Last year, we transferred $92 million to our school system as a direct result of making our forests healthier, expanding habitat, conserving those spaces. The federal government loses money on every single acre. So I came up with the idea, why don't we manage the federal lands on their behalf and we'll split the revenue. So we just recently signed a stewardship agreement where Montana will be taking over 400,000 acres of federal land here in the state. So my advice to Congress is give the states their reins. Abide by the 10th Amendment, states' rights. Let us do our job. We can do it better when we're closer to the issue and the people. Having served in Congress, nothing happens there without a crisis. We've got a crisis in spending. We've got a crisis in affordability of health care. Let's focus on the things that are federally mandated under the jurisdiction of the Constitution. Let's let the states do their job. We're much closer to the problem. We can do it better.
That's the governor of Montana, Greg Gianforte. Special guest conversation today on the Scott Jennings Show. He is also the newly elected chairman of the Republican Governors Association. We are going to continue this conversation. On the other side of this break, I want to talk to you about some of the critical governor's races that are going on around the country. It's common sense for the American people. Stay with us. Scott Jennings here on Salem.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
Monday, January 12th, live from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. It's common sense for the American people. Let me give you a quick dose of common sense from our friends at Relief Factor. The common sense is you don't have to live with everyday aches and pains. Some people think that you do. They just settle into this and say, well, I guess it's how life is going to be. The common sense approach is to try relief factor. I get letters about this, by the way. Here's one from our friend George in Oregon. George the garbage man, jumping on and off a garbage truck all day. He had issues with his knee, couldn't bend it. He starts taking relief factor, and he writes us. It says, and I quote, "I can bend my knee again with very little pain. Makes doing his job a lot easier. We're using it in the Jennings household. My father, from Dawson Springs, Kentucky, Jeff Jennings, says it's great. And I personally witness his running around chasing the 4 Jennings boys in the Jennings household and can tell you he's no spring chicken, but he's hopping around like one. Give it the 3-week quick start. Give it a try. $19.95. 1-800-4RELIEF or relieffactor.com. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings here on Salem. Our special guest conversation today with Governor Greg Gianforte of Montana. Governor, thanks for holding over with us. You have been elected chairman of the Republican Governors Association. As you mentioned in our previous break, in our previous segment, we have a number of governors' races, gubernatorial contests going on around the country. What are some of the states that conservatives around the country should be looking at as critical battlegrounds that you'll be monitoring as head of the RGA?
Yeah, Scott, it's a great honor to serve as chairman of the RGA. And there are 36 governor's races just in 2026 alone. In terms of states that we're watching, there are states that should have a Republican governor that don't. For example, Kansas, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan. Those are the ones that we're looking at for potential pickup opportunities. We have great candidates. And then the other role that the RGA has is making sure we defend our Republican governors that are running for re-election in states that are kind of purple. So, for example, Joe Lombardo in Nevada. We're watching that closely. What a great candidate. Chief of police in Las Vegas. If you want safe communities, elect a sheriff to governor. That's what they did in Nevada. He's done a terrific job.
Let me also talk to you about a national issue that I think has both policy but political import for the Republicans. It's this Make America Healthy Again movement. I think it was a big part of President Trump's winning coalition. They're obviously doing things at the federal level. Talk to me about what's going on in Montana and at the state level under Republican governors across the country to promote the principles of the MAHA agenda.
Well, we've taken a page right out of President Trump's playbook. We were recently awarded our rural health grant, $233 million. That was a direct benefit of the big, beautiful bill last year. And we've adopted a number of things. I mean, we need a social safety net for people that hit a rough spot, but we shouldn't be buying them soda and chips. This came directly out of MAHA. Also investing in these rural communities. You can't live in a community if you don't have health care there. So this is one area we've focused on. And just hats off to President Trump and Bobby Kennedy for the work they've done to flip the food pyramid on its head and make America healthy again.
That's Governor Greg Gianforte from the great state of Montana and newly elected chairman of the Republican Governors Association. Governor, I want to personally thank you for coming on the Scott Jennings Show, for heading up the RGA's efforts. We'll check in with you later this year about how all the campaigns are going. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
All right, Governor Gianforte from Montana. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. January the 10th, 1776. Thomas Paine. Common Sense was produced 250 years ago. We're at the anniversary of it. Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, and in its worst state, an intolerable one. Thomas Paine, great American, inspired the colonists to rise up and fight for their independence against the British crown. We take our name and inspiration for this show from the great Thomas Paine and his pamphlet, Common Sense. We'll have more of that for the next hour. Great guests coming up, including Chris LaCivita and Byron Donalds. It's Scott Jennings. Stay with us here on Salem.
The voice of free speech.
The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
All right, it's Monday, January 12th. Scott Jennings on Salem. Common sense for the American people. Coming up in just a few seconds. Political mastermind. President Trump's campaign manager from 2024, Chris LaCivita, joins us. Quick check of the top stories. Iran protests continue. The president's mulling over options on how to support the people of Iran against the brutal regime there. President's also still talking about Greenland. Says we're going to get it one way or the other. You know where I stand. Let's buy it. Real estate deal of the century, if you ask me. Trump administration ramping up ICE presence in Minnesota, sending hundreds more ICE agents there in the wake of last week's shooting and the subsequent reaction from local Democrats demanding that ICE stop enforcing the laws there. President Trump and Secretary Noem say we're doubling down, and the FBI now says that a suspect in the arson fire at a Mississippi synagogue has admitted to targeting the church because of its Jewish ties. Stephen Spencer Pittman charged Monday today with maliciously damaging or destroying a building by means of fire or explosive. The weekend fire ripped through the Beth Israel congregation shortly after 3 o'clock on Saturday morning. No one was injured. This is the same synagogue that was damaged during the civil rights era. Scott Jennings here on Salem. My guest this hour, one of the smartest minds, I used to say in American politics. Now I will say in world politics. The mastermind that put Donald Trump back in the White House in 2024. Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. Chris LaCivita. Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Wow, that was a bit much, Scott. Co-manager, as you know, and the one who put Donald Trump back in the Oval Office was Donald Trump. But yes, proud to be a member of that team in a leadership capacity, working with Susan, a great operation, and yeah, it was fantastic.
Well, you did your part to save America and Western civilization, and we want to make people aware of that for sure. Let me just start this conversation, Chris, by asking you, it's been a year, really almost, since Donald Trump retook the White House. What's been the last year like for you? You obviously did something that very few people get a chance to do, run a presidential campaign, and you won a presidential campaign. In the year since, what's been going on for Chris LaCivita?
It's been, well, first off, it's great to be on your show, Scott. And I mean, you've been such a great, voice for the conservatives and for Republicans across the country on CNN and here, of course, here on the radio. So we certainly do appreciate everything that you do. And it is quite fun watching you disassemble people. It's a good time. But for the last year, and you do that through facts, and you do it through reason, and you're not mean-spirited about it, and that makes it a lot better. But the last year I've been doing a lot of different things. Obviously, it's been I thought it would calm down, after 2024, and 2024 was kind of a busy, crazy year, but it's only gotten progressively more so in the sense of I was doing some elections overseas, which was fun and different, and did some traveling. But real focus really is putting together an operation that will allow us to maintain the majority in the House in this year's elections, and obviously in keeping the Senate. And all the great changes and all the great things that the president was able to accomplish, through the reconciliation bill and he's been able to do through executive issues and executive orders, all of that will get turned inside out, if the Democrats take control of the House. So obviously a lot of our attention and focus this year will be aimed at keeping that from happening and keeping Speaker Johnson the Speaker of the House.
We spend a lot of time thinking about the Democrats and what the American left is doing to try to stop the Trump administration. Unfortunately, there are some Republicans, or so-called Republicans, who are working from inside the tent to stop the president. I'd like to play some sound from Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Let's hear from Massie, Kentucky's 4th District.
said we would put America first and there wouldn't be regime change, there wouldn't be interventions, but that's what's happening. And I find it ironic that today at the conference, he said we can't lose the majority. If we do, he's going to get impeached, but he's doing the exact things that would cause him to lose the majority.
Thomas Massie of Kentucky opposing the president on Venezuela and several other issues. Chris, when you hear that, what's your reaction? And tell us about the efforts that you may be involved in Kentucky's primary in the 4th Congressional District.
Yeah, sure. Well, Thomas Massie's completely lost his way. This is an unhinged, completely detached member of Congress from Kentucky, who literally has nothing in common with his congressional district anymore. I mean, when people elected Thomas Massie, they wanted a conservative. They wanted someone who would represent their views. And, the president has done exceedingly well in Thomas Massie's congressional district over the years, and, has the overwhelming support of the congressional district, and Massie's been voting against them every single time. I mean, Thomas Massie voted against tax cuts on Social Security. Now, why the hell would you do that? He voted against the president's signature effort, which did eliminate taxes on tips, which eliminated taxes on overtime. These are transformative, redefining issues for the Republican Party that are really aimed at helping the working class and the middle class. And so to stand in the way, just to stand in the way, I mean, he doesn't do it out of principle. He just does it to get attention. So because of that, and the president gives people, he knows they're not going to agree with him 100% of the time, but you can't vote against them and then go after his signature, issues, go at 70-80% of the time and not expect that there's going to be some sort of answer. And that answer is MAGA Kentucky, which is a super PAC that I put together with Tony Fabrizio as the president's chief pollster. And basically, we're going to beat Thomas Massie in a primary. Actually, the voters in the 4th District, the Republicans, are going to vote him out. His numbers right now are upside down. His unfavorable exceeds his favorable rating by nearly 20 points. Galrin, who is the Navy SEAL that the president has endorsed, a local, highly decorated Navy SEAL, a very principled, solid conservative who will represent the district, I think, extremely well. Wins by double digits in a head-to-head matchup with Massie. So Thomas Massie's gotten him. He picked a fight with the wrong people, and we're going to follow through on that and communicate to the voters in the 4th District why he's unfit to continue to be their congressman. I mean, look, the guy hangs out with AOC and the squad. I mean, these are his new buds, and Code Pink and the rest of these freaks. I mean, it's just, it makes no sense, but, it is what it is.
Chris, a minute here before we go to our first commercial break with you. Is it your anticipation? I've seen the president's statements. Obviously, he's very upset with Thomas Massie and has endorsed directly Ed Galrine. It's actually the first time he's ever come out against Massie and for someone else in one of these primaries over the years. Is it your anticipation he'll get more involved in the spring, possibly visiting Kentucky and getting personally engaged in the race?
Well, I mean, he's personally engaged in the race in the sense of that, he has his political people engaged heavily in it, number one. Number two, obviously, he's engaged and made comments and made statements and has, about Thomas Massie and what he's doing to the people in not only in Kentucky, but in his own congressional district. So I can't speak to his schedule. It's a little far away. Right? I mean, it is and it isn't, but we haven't gone through that process yet. But I think it's suffice to say he's going to be very active, and people will be seeing and hearing a lot from MAGA Kentucky in the coming weeks.
That's Chris LaCivita, co-campaign manager for Donald Trump in 2024, one of the biggest political strategists in the United States and one of the most successful Republican strategists in modern political history. More with him in just a moment. I want to tell you about our friends at Relief Factor. Relief Factor. Have you ever been, by the way, in a bad relationship where you know you shouldn't be in it, it just wears you down, but you don't know how to get out of it? That is the relationship that some people have with daily aches and pains. I'm going to give you the pathway out. Relief Factor. 1-800-4RELIEF or ReliefFactor.com. You can learn about the 3-week quick start. It's $19.95. We got a letter from Anthony. I was dealing with debilitating pain and fatigue. I've been taking Relief Factor for 2 months. I'm back to running my business, fishing, gardening, doing the things that really matter to me. We use it in the Jennings household. We agree with Anthony. Relief Factor is a good thing to try. More with Chris LaCivita when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American People. Stay with us.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
Monday, January 12th, Common Sense for the American People. By the way, January 12th, 1951, the birthday of Rush Limbaugh. We celebrate Rush every day here, and keeping up the tradition of what he started on conservative talk radio for all of us who are following in his footsteps. Happy birthday to Rush. We're talking to our special guest, Chris LaCivita, co-campaign manager for President Trump's 2024 successful re-election effort. Chris, you're obviously highly involved in the Republican effort to maintain majorities in the House and the Senate. Let's start with the United States House. Right now, because of some retirements and other issues, we have functionally a one-seat majority in the U.S. House for Republicans, and Democrats think they are going to take it back in November. What is it going to take for Republicans to outkick their historical coverage here and maintain control of the House?
Well, it's gonna be a couple things. I think the most important is once people start seeing the full impact and the full measure of a lot of the policies that the president passed last year start taking impact and taking effect, that will, because it was all retroactive to last year, and people start really feeling it in the first quarter here and the second quarter of 26. I think people are going to see, wow, they're going to see the cost of everything, from food, because we've already seen the cost of fuel, cost of gasoline drop dramatically. So when people start seeing actual impacts, right, from a lot of these policies, then the voting will generally follow along those same patterns. Plus, the president has taken an enormous amount of time in ensuring that his political operation has the resources necessary to ensure that we won't be outspent, which is, the left has always outspent Republicans in the past. And so the president has embarked on an ambitious fundraising effort that is going to make sure that we're armed with the right information. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't have the passion in the voters and you don't have the ability, you don't have the right tactics, the right strategy, and most importantly, if you don't have the right policy, I don't care how good you are politically, you're not going to win. But, we've got all of the above. So we feel really, really good about where we're going to be in 2026.
Do you have confidence in the Republican Party's efforts to try to recruit Trump voters who have only showed up for Donald Trump into the larger Republican fold? This, to me, is the number one tactical issue for the Republican Party, how to get his unique coalition to engage in every election. I assume you have knowledge of the efforts going on to do just that. Do you have confidence that this is working, or is it only the president himself who can get these folks to understand that if you don't vote this November, they'll be impeaching Donald Trump come January?
I'm very involved in those efforts, and it's very similar to what we were doing in the 2024 campaign with voters who casual voters who don't show up. Of course, everyone knows that voter turnout at a midterm is substantially lower than in a presidential year, and both sides have that issue. But we have a pretty good idea of who our voters are, where they live, what their IP address is, what their phone numbers are, what their emails are. And we've been able to actually, in a lot of elections since 24 and some of the specials, most notably in Tennessee, we were able to test a lot of different tactics. And we were very pleased in some of the things that we were able to put together to juice turnout, make sure that people were voting and they understood what was at stake. So we actually do. We've never stopped studying the electorate since the election. Just because you win a big election doesn't mean, you take everything and go home. No, you're constantly self-improvement. And so we've done a pretty good job. The president has an amazing White House political operation led by Susie Wiles and James Blair. Very, very attentive to detail. And on the outside, it's, MAGA Inc. and Tony Fabrizio and myself. And so, it's a really, really good team that follows the president's lead. And, we've, like I said, maintained a degree of awareness and maintained this constant self-improvement to find, the right audiences and make sure that they're there for the president on Election Day.
That voice you're hearing today, that of Chris LaCivita, co-campaign manager for Donald Trump in 2024, renowned Republican political strategist, and a combat wounded Marine. This man has served his country, and now he is serving and saving all of Western civilization by trying to ensure more Republican and conservative victories in November and beyond. Chris, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a break. When we come back here at the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. We're broadcasting from Florida today. In fact, we're in beautiful Palm Beach Gardens. Byron Donalds coming up next. It's Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here. Stay with us.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Monday, January 12th, Scott Jennings here on Salem. We are broadcasting live today from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Little Florida tour. I'll be here in Palm Beach Gardens today and tomorrow. Broadcasting this show on Wednesday from Tallahassee. Stay tuned for news about big guests we'll be interviewing in Tallahassee. And I also want to thank our friends at Studio 67 and my buddy Curtis Bush for hosting us here in Palm Beach Gardens today and tomorrow. With us on the line, special conversation today, Congressman Byron Donalds is here representing the 19th District of the Free State of Florida. He's also running to be the next governor of Florida. In Washington, he is a member of the House Oversight and Financial Services Committees. And we're going to talk about what's going on in D.C. and about his campaign to be governor of Florida. Byron Donalds, Congressman, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Scott. It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you, sir, and it's been fun. A couple of times we've sat with each other at the table at CNN, fighting off a few crazy narratives out there, and you're one of the most able debaters in the Republican Party today, so we're appreciative of those efforts, and thank you for your time today. I want to start with your job in Washington before we get to your campaign for governor. You're on the Oversight Committee. And just the other day, last week, in fact, you guys interviewed some folks from Minnesota about the unfolding fraud investigation that's going on there. You had some state representatives in from Minnesota to talk about the billions of dollars that have been stolen from taxpayers and how Tim Walz and other Democrats in Minnesota have either been involved in it or, at a minimum, looked the other way. What did you learn in that hearing, and where can we expect the investigation to go next?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I think it's more than they just look the other way. I think that Governor Walz, and it appears to be the Attorney General Keith Ellison, they definitely took campaign cash from these fraudsters in Minnesota. But the most damning thing is that the Walz administration, the governor himself, the Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and probably other officials, they were retaliating against the whistleblowers who were trying to do the right thing on behalf of the people of Minnesota and the people of America, the federal taxpayer, and trying to bring this fraud to light and actually have real accountability. And these public officials, their careers were threatened. A handful of them said that their families were threatened. People were fired. They were told they would never get another job again if they kept this up. And that was intimidation tactics from the Walz administration. And I would tell you, there was a statement that was made in the hearing where the lieutenant governor, speaking to a room full of public employees, in the state of Minnesota, was basically saying that, yeah, if you're looking at this and you're not actually helping our state, it's racist, it's Islamophobic. And so there is deep corruption here. I would add probably conspiracy of the Walz administration, not just knowing about it, that's just being incompetent, but allowing it to continue to flourish. In my view, that's conspiracy.
Now, I know the Oversight Committee on a number of investigations over the last year has made referrals to the Trump Justice Department, criminal referrals. Are you expecting more information on this to go to DOJ? I know they are already investigating. I know the U.S. Attorney's Office up there is involved. But I assume you're providing materials to DOJ. And is it your expectation that we are going to see more federal indictments in the days and weeks ahead?
Yeah, we are providing information to DOJ as it comes to us, and that is our interpretation. I think for the American people, one thing that needs to be understood, there's already well over 50 people who've been arrested, indicted. I think about a dozen or so have already pled guilty to wire fraud, so there is accountability happening. I think why this story continues to expand is because now we've come to know that it was the political apparatus in Washington from Governor Walz and his administration that did nothing to actually bring this fraud to a close. They actually allowed it to continue. Part of that was for political payback because, look, in the Somali community in Minnesota, it's a very tight-knit community. What they were relying on were votes out of this community, campaign cash out of this community. So it's not even just a looking the other way. They were stopping state workers from doing their job of stopping this fraud dead in its tracks and holding people accountable.
Let me ask you about one of your colleagues from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman from up that way. She has been in the middle of defending the fraud and possibly being involved in the fraud. There have been some reported links between some of her operations and some of the fraudulent operations. She's also been on the front lines of attacking ICE and I think making things up about what happened on the ground there with ICE agents in Minneapolis. In fact, I'm going to play you a couple of comments. This is Ilhan Omar this weekend. Let's cue up cut 8. Let's listen to what she had to say about the confrontation between ICE and Miss Good in Minneapolis.
If they are saying that he has 10 years on service and is trained, he should know that you shouldn't be trying to get in front of a moving car. And
it sounds like, Byron, she is endorsing people taking moving vehicles and driving them into active federal law enforcement zones. Why have Democrats embraced this political vigilantism in the way that they have? It is extremely dangerous.
They embrace it because their entire mission is to oppose everything that Donald Trump is doing and trying to find ways. Goes back to Saul Alinsky tactics. Pick a target, personalize it, and polarize it. And that's what they're trying to do. You described it right on CNN the other day. It is political vigilantism because what they want to do is obstruct ICE at every turn, put these officers in harm's way, and then when something happens, then they want to feign outrage and say, see, we told you this is all the fault of President Trump. It's simply not true. Joe Biden put the ICE officials on mothballs. They were not following federal immigration law. Joe Biden himself and his administration ignored federal immigration law. Donald Trump won a political mandate in 2024 to clean it up, to deport criminal illegal aliens, and that's what he's doing. And when he reactivated ICE, at a moment's notice, you had these AstroTurf groups in the streets all across America protesting, getting in the way of these ICE officials from doing their job. You had the one member of Congress from New Jersey at the gate of the ICE facility pushing ICE officers out of the way. You had the 2 ICE officers down in Dallas who were being shot at, and 2 illegal aliens they were transporting were killed in that shooting. There have been other incidents, actually, with this shooter. There's been with the officer in question. There's been incidents where that officer was already hit with another vehicle, and so these ICE officers are under siege by these radical protesters who have their cell phone cameras out 24 hours a day, trying to make an incident out of something that occurs, which is quite frankly the protesters' fault and action. And then you have Ilhan Omar, Jacob Frey, the mayor, Governor Walz, Gavin Newsom, so many other who are gaslighting the American people while fomenting these AstroTurf protests. So if you're going to take a car and drive it at law enforcement, let me be the first to tell you, law enforcement is going to pull out their weapon because a vehicle, 4,000 pounds, is a deadly weapon when it is ramping up speed. That is a fact. And so in my view, the officer did what was necessary because his life was on the line when that woman decided that she was going to accelerate her vehicle towards the officer.
Let's stay with Ilhan Omar and talk about the overall Democratic position here, which is that ICE should not be enforcing existing federal immigration law. You know, I say this all the time, but since Donald Trump became the president, we haven't passed any new laws. These are existing immigration laws that have been on the books for a very long time. And as you correctly pointed out, Congressman Donalds, the Biden administration simply wouldn't enforce the law. So Trump tells the law enforcement officers, just enforce the law. Let's listen to Cut 9 here. This is Ilhan Omar, who says ICE is a waste of taxpayer resources.
I'm so exhausted in trying to ask what any of this, information has led to you finding any criminals that you have indicted that explains why you are wasting so much of our taxpayer resources and also terrorizing our communities in the amount of federal law enforcement agents that you have in the streets of our city and our state. There needs to be some sort of justification.
Congressman Donalds, your reaction to Ilhan Omar.
So stupid, so ridiculous. First of all, it's funny that the Democrats only care about spending money when money's being used to enforce the law. This was the same mess they talked about when Donald Trump was building the wall during his first administration. Or everybody remembers the phony crying at the gate of AOC when the president was doing the right thing, people trying to come across the border illegally, and they're holding them in detention facilities, which is what you're supposed to do. So this is, again, the idiocy of the left captured by Representative Omar. It makes no sense at all. And let's be very clear. If you're in the country illegally, you've already broken our laws. If ICE doesn't enforce the law, then who does? Some social worker in Minnesota, or better yet, some NGO that Ilhan Omar and the Democrats love to fund, which, by the way, are not securing our nation. A lot of these NGOs precipitated the invasion of more than 10 million illegal immigrants into the United States under the presidency of Joe Biden. So this is the problem we're having in the country. They want to use language to make it seem that they're the ones under some phony siege, when in truth, ICE officers are enforcing federal immigration law that has been longstanding law in the United States for decades. And it is they who are ignoring the law, abusing the law, and want to take your taxpayer money to basically fund it into these organizations that are fraudulent or undermining the security of the United States and of the American people.
That voice you're hearing today, Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. He's in Washington, doing his job as congressman and also running for governor of Florida. Congressman Donalds, we have about 30 seconds before we need to take a break. I do want to shift gears and talk a little state politics. I'll just lead with this. How is your campaign going? Are you confident that Republicans will retain the governor's mansion in Florida this year?
Well, the campaign's going great. I've had the honor of being endorsed by President Donald Trump. He's a good friend. He's been a great supporter of mine. We've been in 50 counties through Florida, crisscrossing the state. The polling numbers are very big. We're up big on any competition in the state. But this is about the people of Florida, the future of our state. Our Governor DeSantis, has done a tremendous job. We are the free state of Florida. And as the state's next governor, we're going to remain that way while addressing the cost of housing and insurance and taxes and making sure that Florida remains the #1 state in all of America. Really excited for the opportunity at the job, and it's going very, very well.
That's Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida. He represents the 19th District in Florida in Washington right now, but he is also running to be the next governor. In fact, Congressman, we're going to be broadcasting the show from Tallahassee on Wednesday, so we'll be doing a little deeper dive into Florida state issues. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, more on your campaign for governor of Florida. Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida is our special guest. You are listening to Common Sense for the American People. You're on Salem. I'm Scott Jennings. Stay with us for more with Byron Donalds after this.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
Monday, January 12th, Common Sense for the American People. It's Scott Jennings broadcasting live from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, the free state of Florida. We'll be here for the next couple of days, and we are talking to the probable next governor of Florida right now. Congressman Byron Donalds is our special conversation. Congressman, thanks for being with us. I want to talk a little bit about your life story. You were the product of a single-parent household in Brooklyn, New York. You made your way down to Florida. You're a Florida State grad, and you were kind of apolitical for your early adult life, and then the Great Recession happened, and you got motivated to get involved in politics. Tell us a little about your personal journey in Florida politics here.
Sure. Look, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I moved to Florida at 17 to go to college. I graduated from Florida State, like you said. And in my early adult years, being married, starting to have kids, in my career in banking and insurance, I was apolitical. I didn't watch C-SPAN. I didn't watch Fox or CNN or MSNBC. I was more concerned about ESPN. That's what I watched. I love sports, love movies, still do to this day. But when the financial collapse was happening, when I was working in insurance, we were concerned about the client leaving our firm, and I was tasked by the company to go do research on the financial collapse. And I finally turned on this channel called C-SPAN because they were having a hearing in House Financial Services. And I watched it for a couple of hours, and I found myself saying the same thing that President Trump said when he came down the escalator in 2015. I was saying to myself, man, these people are stupid, and they don't know what they're doing. And it really dumbfounded me that the people who were elected to serve the nation had no real idea of what was happening in America's economy. And so from there, I decided that it was my responsibility to start to kind of pay attention to this stuff, pay attention to politics. And it really started a journey. When the Tea Party rallies started in 2009 here in Southwest Florida, like they did all around the country, I decided to go to one. I wanted to see what it was about. And I started seeing people talking about the Constitution, limited government, not having massive amounts of debt. I mean, we were like 14 trillion in debt at the time. I wish we were there today. And those issues, no bank bailouts, those are issues and statements that I agreed with. And I started getting involved in the conservative movement in Naples, Florida, starting in 2009, and never looked back.
And you got elected to the Florida State House, and one of your signature issues was education reform, parental rights in education, school choice. Tell us about those education issues and why you decided to make your mark on that in the Florida legislature.
Well, it actually still goes back to my mom. My mom was a school choice mom before it was a thing. She pulled me out of public school because she felt that they weren't going to be able to challenge me and give me the academic rigor that I needed. And so that then came back again when our oldest son, Erica and ours oldest son, was going through math in elementary school, and he was frustrated and I was frustrated watching Common Core math be done at the kitchen table because it made no sense. And, that kind of really instilled a passion in me where what I wanted to see was school choice, where parents were at the head of the table. They had the purchasing power to make those education decisions for their kids. The beauty of being in the Florida legislature is that we were able to make that happen during my time in the legislature. We started it. And so I'm really excited for what we've done in Florida. We are now a full school choice state here in Florida. It's been the best thing for our parents, the best thing for our kids. And it's really about having an economy of education so parents can pick and choose the best environment for their children. That's going to lead to the best academic success possible for their children. And Florida, once again, is leading the way on a major issue.
Got about 30 seconds, Byron. Big issue in the Florida governor's race, property taxes. What's your views on what the next governor should do about this?
Well, look, I fully support Governor DeSantis' view on eliminating homestead property taxes. My hope is that he's able to get something accomplished with the legislature, and that ends up on our ballot this November. I want to see it on the ballot because we need real relief for Floridians when it comes to taxes. They've increased in our state from about $32 billion to almost $56, $58 billion in a decade. And that's real money coming out of the hands of seniors on fixed income, young families trying to get their start in life. We have a responsibility to control government and control that tax burden. So I support the governor and what he's trying to accomplish. If they're not able to get something done, we're going to pick up the ball my first year as governor, and we're going to make sure we're providing real relief to people who are trying to get their start to follow the American dream here in Florida, or seniors in their golden years already living that dream as well.
That's Congressman Byron Donalds, the Republican frontrunner for governor this year in Florida. Congressman, thanks for joining us. We're out of time today. It's Common Sense for the American People, broadcasting from Florida. Back here again tomorrow. Don't miss a thing. Scott Jennings, thanks for being with us.
Common Sense for the American People. This is the Scott Jennings Show.